Welcome to the Beau Show. Today's show will be a conversation with musician Michale Graves. I enjoy informal dialogues like this, especially musician to musician, because we see the world in a different way. And sometimes we even use our music to make commentary about the world that we live in. Michale grew up in the punk music scene and never really made a big splash until 1995 when he was chosen to be the lead singer for the reunion of the band The Misfits. He recorded with them for their 1997 album American Psycho. He stayed with the Misfits until 2000, and during stints with other bands, he decided to join the Marine Corps in 2003. A back injury earned Graves an honorable discharge, and he picked up where he left off musically, going back on the road to tour. Graves also teamed up with Damien, one of the West Memphis Three that was convicted and later released from prison, and has raised money for Eccles' legal defense. Perhaps most unique is Graves' outspoken conservative beliefs in a very liberal industry. I wanted to gain some insight into his musical path, where his beliefs came from, and what the reaction has been. At a time when free speech has very much been restricted and media conglomerates band together to force a chosen narrative, sometimes it's the rebels of society, which can be the musicians, that have to step up to the plate. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
I started out in music really early in my life. I always loved music. The first thing that was in my heart, I wanted to be a preacher man. And at about the age of 7 or 8, that changed, and I found music. And so I was always a creative person. I was always a musical person. And I just knew that I was going to be a music man. I got into the Misfits because of that. I dedicated my life to music and art, and I always knew that was the path I was supposed to be on. So just by chance, I was working in a studio recording a demo, and I ran into the guys in the Misfits. And so I was 19 years old when I auditioned for the band. And when I got that opportunity, life is all about being ready for the opportunity, being prepared for opportunity, which I was. And by circumstances and amazing things falling into place, I got the gig. The foundation in which my conservative values, my principles come from, it's the way that I was raised. My mom, and my family, and the people I surrounded myself with. But really it was my family, my mom and dad, and how I was raised. I was outspoken in a different sort of way. When I was younger in the Misfits, I didn't do a lot of interviews. And one of the reasons I didn't do a lot of interviews is because it was difficult for me to articulate myself. It was difficult for me to talk in a normal, English language and translate what I was feeling inside. And so I focused just on the music. Bob Dylan said you have to know your song well before you start singing. And so I didn't feel like I could really represent a lot of these things. I always championed and talked about individual freedom and allowing individuals to be individuals and all-encompassing love. There's a lot more of my values and my principles that are hidden in the music back then. Yeah, yes. And nobody really ever asked me about them. When I was in the Misfits, it never really came up. And so I never had to answer those questions. Well, there was this mass awakening after September 11th. I was caught up in the psychological operation that was September 11th, where then the focus was on Muslims and, people that were coming from Iraq and Afghanistan. And you started to see all of this, well, we have to give up our rights in order to protect ourselves. And that became a slippery slope. All of the things that were revealed through those years, all of these guys that made these sacrifices to go fight these wars under the guise of, we're making America better, we're making the homeland better, we're making our families better, we're making our country better as well. And through making our country better, we're making these people better. But that is not at all what was happening. There were guys that were in the military that as well became awake, because everyone was just saying, what are you talking about? There are no weapons of mass destruction. That was a complete and total lie. And then everything else. So that all of this corruption came out, and again, for me, I was attacked viciously for representing these things and saying, the war is a good thing. And I did support George Bush publicly, no one, behind the scenes going, this is not a good thing. Like, how much longer can I do this? Nobody's helping me. It's just me. When everybody came to cancel me and threaten me, and nobody helped me in the Republican Party. And so again, I walked away from it, because that party was not representing my morals or my values or the way that I saw my country. They let everybody down. I agree with you. There's people that I know that are friends of mine, Joe Biggs and Ethan Nordine, that are sitting in the bottom of a jail cell right now, and they didn't do anything wrong that should have them in the predicament that they are in, being treated the way that they are being treated. And there's lots of cases like that, where the Republican Party, they know, and they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything for us. Well, just as a human being, when you see all of that suffering, whether it's those young soldiers were killed, they didn't need to be killed, whether it's that or the people that were being hassled in the streets or killed in the streets, just the humanity of it all. To see all of that, all of our equipment, these billions of dollars worth of equipment just being left behind for people that don't want to bring any sort of good to this world. They are an evil incarnation. Just the humanity of it all. It makes me sad. It makes me angry. It makes me frustrated. It's supposed to do that, and then you can get caught up in the nuances of, well, did these people know about it? Why did it happen this way? Was it just gross incompetency? I don't think that something like that. Absolutely horrible. Yeah, it does. Um, But what's at play nowadays is cancel culture, and because of where we're at as a society, being popular and being in the clique and making sure that you are able to preserve your online space, which is a life in itself. It's an extension of people's lives. Even perhaps if people disagree, time after time, you see that they don't want to get involved because they don't want to jeopardize all of those things.
Yeah.
They want to hold on to whatever their contracts. They don't want to rustle the feathers of people that they're doing business with. So it's not surprising to me, because I saw the industry really was lurching left, especially in the rock and the punk and the metal community, but punk especially, in the 90s. So no, it doesn't surprise me that there's not more, but there will be more as the screws are tightened down and it becomes more and more real.
Yeah.
The effects of everything that's happening to us, when it reaches them, that they'll hopefully more people will stand up.
In the business, in one business, everyone is liberal. How is that possible? How is that possible? How is it possible when the country is basically?
I think, yes, I think there are. They just don't want to get tangled up in it. But what you just said and what Rogan talks about is the delusion here.
Yeah.
There's this big delusion, this mass delusion that's happening, that has appeared in history many, many times, because history is redundant. A great example is the Salem witch trials. Great example is Nazism, where you have people that aren't, logic and logic go together. If you disagree, you can do that all day. But when you insert this illogical bit to it all, there's no way to bring logic to an irrational, something that's not based in reason or reality. And so something like that, which is a tool of tyranny, which is a tool of authoritarianism, that delusion appeals to more of the emotional part of the human being and not the rational part of the human being. And so you're much more easily manipulated psychologically. And so you can and that's why it's done. That's why it's done through entertainment and music and all of the programming. And the internet and these social sites as well. It all pushes you psychologically. It's tough nowadays, again, because there are so many different landmines, and everybody, especially if you're a high profile person, they're just waiting for you to say something, because there's this enjoyability that the mob gets now from canceling people, because it feels so good for them to virtue signal in that way. And the cost is so great. The cost is so great. I've lost people that I've known for 20 years that just don't talk to me anymore. All my band members quit. All of my business connections quit. They won't do anything with me. My agents, both domestically, internationally. I was taken off of Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Upwards of more than 250,000 followers. My customers, my voice just silenced. with no recourse. I'm just thrown into the gutter. And I have a family. Again, I've been in business for 25 years and it's all gone. I'm starting essentially again with this big black X over me.
Yeah.
So yeah, the costs are very, very high for somebody like me. If you're Nicki Minaj, if you're Dave Mustaine, if you're Glenn Danzig, well, not that you're uncancelable, but you can sustain that damage. So people like myself, you know, the cost is high, you know, but I always say I've pledged my life and my treasure and my sacred honor to God and my country, my family, and my friends. So we have to create parallel structures. We have to create parallel structures, other systems of business and economies, and, you know, another MTV has to be built, but it has to be from a conservative side of a, you know, an open, an old school liberal, which is what America is. Yeah, right. A classic liberal mind. And that's why I'm putting myself out there, and wonderful people like yourself are giving me the opportunity to speak, in the hopes as I rebuild, that, you know, I can be part of this parallel structure movement. Again, I mean, think about it. You look at MTV. So we have to build something that is the exact opposite of that, because the demand is still there. We have to support artists and bands and musicians who are being individuals and speaking their mind, whatever that is, and then doing battle in an intellectual space and giving people the platforms to sit down with one another and speak to one another, so that other people, young people, can see what that looks like. That I can disagree with you and you can disagree with me, but we can have these ideas, and through music and art and culture, learn how to disagree with one another and learn how to speak to one another instead of just doing this and hiding behind a computer. That's what needs to be done. I knew going in. The producers called me up and they said, we want to do this bit. So I knew that I was going to be lambasted and made fun of. But that was the point, and that's really why I did it. We had so much fun You know, I think that in the real world, people look at that and they think that I was being serious. But I wasn't. Laughing and having comedy is such an essential part of it all. And especially talking about such substantive things, you know, life and death matters. It was fun. It was, No, because I think that people like that, they just live in their bubble. They're not going home at night and saying, "All right, let me take these things that I believe and challenge them. Let me get more information so that I can further my mind and learn about how the world works and why and that." That's not happening. People are going home, they're having a cup of coffee, they're looking at magazines, they're watching a bunch of Netflix, they're going to sleep, they're waking up, and they're doing it all again. And whatever fits into their worldview is going to be the things that they pull out of the universe. They're not going to, it's just not like that. I think that people like you and I, and probably your audience and everyone that's in the freedom movement and everyone that loves we're different. We have the ability to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to find out if I'm wrong. Let me get more information and challenge myself. And then once I get that information, I will then once again make a decision, right? It's science. Everyone's talking, well, it's the science. Well, there it is. It's science. And I don't think that people exercise that and try to grow in that way. Classic liberal. They don't. They're not allowing. They don't put themselves in a position to, and they don't challenge their beliefs. And any sort of challenge that does come, they immediately push it away, because I mean, they would have their whole world crumble down around them, which is okay. And obviously they're not the type of people that are able to say, all right, I'm totally wrong. And that's unfortunate. But yeah, they are absolutely wrong. They've become the same things that they were railing against that actually made them. The same thing with Howard Stern and everything that he's been saying about people. He's railing against and saying things against people about the First Amendment and freedom. The way that he was attacking those peoples and all those things way back when he was coming up, it's this complete reversal. It's a bizarre world, and that's why musicians and artists and cultural, but we need to continue to push back like we are. It's really full blown, and it started about a year and a half ago because I didn't put the black square up on my Instagram.
Yep.
Blackout Tuesday,
Yep.
and it really went from there. Again, in 2004, I started to write for and speak out about these things. I was involved at conservativepunk.com, so that's where I got the conservative punk label. In 2018, it started to happen again with the big wave of censorship that came through. But then about a year ago, it was the Blackout Tuesday deal that really got everybody enraged. And like I said earlier, my Facebook was taken down, my Instagram was taken down, my YouTube channels were taken down, my Twitter was taken down, all within a 24-hour period. They just disappeared. Like everything just stopped working.
Crazy.
Everything was just gone. And I had been building that up since the MySpace days. That was more than 20 years worth of work. It's just gone.
Yeah.
Gone. And like, I don't know what phone number to call. There's no recourse whatsoever.
They make it impossible.
I was literally assassinated. And then what happens after they do that to you is then the press comes in, and then all in the underground press and on the chat boards, they start talking about me, and there's no way for me to get my voice out there. It's assassination in the online world. And so
Trump too, yeah.
Exactly. And then all of the Nazi, white supremacist, homophobe, anti-immigration, patriot, Trump supporter, you just fill all those other words are labeled upon me. So that now when I step into a public space, when I try to appear somewhere and conduct my business, I'm a performer. For example, in the places that have canceled me in New Jersey and Maryland and essentially all over the country, but those recently and in particular, they say, what happens is there was an online group that made an account that looked like me, and they took screenshots of very, very inappropriate, hateful things and started to send them to the clubs and say, do you know that you're allowing an avowed white supremacist, Proud Boy, Trump supporter, again, all of those things to play at your club? This will not stand. And they make phone calls and they make a big deal out of it. And promoters and clubs, they fold. They say, we don't want to be any part of this. We don't want the bad publicity. But that's the enraging part. And that's why I say, especially in New Jersey and New York, it's especially enraging because we are dealing with a delusion. I say to these promoters, what do you mean you don't want bad press? Like, I grew up 25 minutes from the club. Like, you don't want the bad press about what? You don't want to be involved. They're calling me a Nazi and a white supremacist. There is nothing that can tag me to that at all. My reputation is good. Anyone that's ever worked with me, I have been building a reputation in the real world and on the online world for 25 years. That's, I've messed up here and there, but so we're dealing with this delusion and in certain sections of reality, my good name, there's people that actually believe that I'm a Nazi. Right. It's really crazy. And I mean that it's crazy, like witch trial crazy. And that's where the danger is. So they've completely stripped me of my morals, of my humanness. That I'm less of a human than them because of all these things. Yeah. Now I'm out in the real world. Like part of my equipment now, are things like bulletproof vests. There's a certain, and this goes to, all of cancel culture. It's why Stefan Molyneux says that this cancel culture is absolutely a dress rehearsal for real world executions and genocide. Because if they'll do it online, It was amazing. It was one of the most amazing things that I've ever been part of. Damien and I were corresponding back and forth. We would write letters back and forth to one another while he was on death row towards the end of his time in prison. And he was a very creative person. We would talk about music a lot and art, and he remembers a lot of the bands that in the 90s that I loved before he went away. And he used to write a lot of poetry, so we got to talking through our letters and said, well, you know, it would be a really cool thing. Maybe you write some poetry and we'll record your voice and I'll score it. I'll put some music underneath it. And what I was trying to do, what the project really was about was, it wasn't about guilt or innocence. It wasn't about any of the politics of it. We just wanted to bring a human side to the story and show that that Damien was a human being. There was a humanity there involved, and a beautiful love story that was being told. And so we said, all right, let's do this. And I was waiting for Damien to send me some poetry, and eventually a letter came, and he said, I think that I wrote a song. And he would describe to me that when he was writing eventually this set of lyrics that became songs that we wrote together, he would say, I'm thinking about Nick Cave, something mid-tempo, I hear. And then I would take it and I would kind of vibe out on it and start playing. And we composed these incredible songs together, and we put it together in an album called Illusions. My music's always had that in it. It's just different levels, I guess, of secrecy, if you will. The music that I make now is much more country punk, like punk country. I don't know. I learn, I do covers of Bob Dylan. I do covers of Jesus Culture. But there's all the old Misfits stuff that I still do. It's much more. People will be very surprised. If you go to my website, officialmichaelgraves.com, there's a version of me playing a song that I just wrote called American Prayer. It's much more Aaron Lewis than it is Dave Mustaine. It's much more country and folk and U2-ish, if you will. I have dedicated my life, and I continue to dedicate my life to using my gifts, music, art, anything that God has given me to communicate with people and raise them up and continue to through God's Spirit build a better world and raise people up and motivate them and be individuals and build a better world, make people feel good about themselves. I agree with you. Thank you very much for allowing me this time on your platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.